All right, we're live. Hi, everyone.
Hello.
All right, we'll give everyone a couple seconds to join us. But we're really excited about this to update you guys on the community trust project that we facilitated a couple months ago now in partnership with the population health team at Corewell Health, also in partnership with Present Pillars and Present Pillars on our end for Ben Harbor. So we'll give people a couple more seconds to start tuning in. But while we wait for people to come in, I just want to introduce myself. My name is Ashley Hines, and I serve as the executive director of the Benton Harbor Community Development Corporation. Unfortunately, James Gunter of Present Pillars was not able to join us today. He's tied up with another project, but he's really excited about updating you all as well. Then I'll pass it over to Heather and Nathan from Population Health to introduce themselves. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Oh yeah, sorry. We're having a little bit of internet difficulties, so
Oh, okay.
if you pop in and out, that's why. So I'm
Okay.
Nathan Browning. I work as a research and evaluation consultant for Corewell Health South for the Population Health Department.
Yep. My name's Heather Rudnick. I also work for Population Health at Corewell Health South. I am a project specialist, and my specialty is population health assessment and research.
Awesome. So thank you guys for joining me today. So we went live a couple months ago to kind of talk a little bit about this project. James facilitated that discussion. But for those of you who aren't familiar, we partnered with Corewell to facilitate. I guess it's the second project we've done in partnership with each other. The first one was an asset mapping project, but this project was to really gauge community trust and to figure out areas of opportunity and what people consider as if they trust the community, what are the measurements or gauges for safety and trust as it relates to not just Benton Harbor but communities throughout Berrien County. And you may remember a survey floating around where we gave $5 to people, and I know people were like, $5, not a lot of money. But the idea was that because of this research project, we'll be able to then take the funding and implement on behalf of our organizations um, projects that respond to the community's needs for trust. And so what James and I have decided to do was, instead of the Ben Harbor CDC or Present Pillars facilitating projects, we would provide micro grants to residents of Ben Harbor, which we'll talk a little bit about later, in order for you to implement your own projects as it relates to community trust. So without further ado, I'll pass it on to Nathan and Heather to kind of get into the research portion of this.
Yep. Give us a moment while we get the slides up.
Oh, there we
Okay.
go.
Okay, great.
Let's start from the beginning.
Okay, so thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. So we're really excited to start presenting the results of the trust research. And before we dig into the details on like what we actually were able to discover, I wanted to go over a little bit of background about this project. From this survey, we were able to, we surveyed all of Berrien County, so it wasn't specific just to Benton Harbor or Benton Heights. And we asked for questions around 5 different constructs or categories that we then used to begin to understand what does trust look like in the community and where are some of the areas that there might be some need for improvement. So one of the constructs was opportunities to engage socially in the neighborhood. So one of the things that we learned early on in this project was that one of the things people said that a trustworthy neighborhood had was opportunities for people to get together, build relationships, and to be socially engaged. The other thing that people mentioned was kind of the result of having those opportunities was that people are socially connected and they're able to rely on their neighbors. So, for example, if someone is out of town, they can rely on their neighbors to get their mail or to just keep an eye on their house. The other thing that people mention that trustworthy neighborhoods have is quality infrastructure, cleanliness, and pride in the neighborhood. So some of the examples of what that actually looks like in practice is that that people are keeping their yard up. So grass is cut, hedges are trimmed, those sorts of things. And that's an indicator that the neighborhood has a lot of pride, and there's concern for making sure that it stays clean. There's also the things like park equipment; those are high quality and in good repair. The other one of the other ones was that trustworthy neighborhoods are safe and peaceful, and that people feel safe, that there's not going to be any crime in the neighborhood. One of the indicators people indicated for that was that they feel safe leaving their door unlocked. The last of the constructs is that youth have productive ways to engage in the neighborhood, and that those ways are actually safe. So those are the 5 constructs that comprised of what we were asking questions about. We also really wanted to make sure that we were understanding what the importance of each of these constructs were for the people who took the survey. So we asked people to rank or rate each of those constructs to say if it's the most important or not important at all. So 4 being most important or 1 being not important at all. So each of those 5 constructs people rated from 1 to 4. And then in their community. So statements were made, and participants were asked to select one of 4 options, rating the quality of that neighborhood aspect within that construct. So it ranged from strongly disagree all the way up to strongly agree. And I'll hand the computer over to Nathan.
Thank you.
And guys, I'm just going to come in. I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm going to come in for a second, just because your internet is going in and out. So I just want to make sure that someone is always here if we go out again. So.
Okay, sure.
Alrighty.
So getting into some of the results, and we talked about importance and we talked about quality.
All right, so we went out again. Give us just a second. We're having some tech issues.
And see if it comes back here.
All righty. You there, Nathan?
Uh-oh.
I can hear you guys.
Did you lose us, Ashley?
I can hear you guys now. We did lose you. Yeah. So just if you're just tuning in, so Nathan and Heather, they're here, but they're on site today at First Church of God in Benton Heights, and so they're having some internet issues out there. So if you could be patient and bear with us as we get through this, that would be great.
Sorry about that. Yes. So we're looking at importance. That's on the left to the right. On the right side, that's the higher importance ratings. And then quality goes from bottom to up, or from top to down. And so basically, the higher the quality, the higher up a dot is going to be on the graph. And so with this, we sort of were able to graph each different location that we grouped in the county to look at, where is their high quality, all of these neighborhood aspects. And one thing I'll say about the neighborhood aspects too that we didn't mention is that those aspects came from a series of interviews that we did, like starting before the pandemic and lasting throughout the pandemic. We were doing that for a long time to sort of come up with these indicators. So those are all based on things that we heard from those interviews. And also one thing that we probably should have mentioned is that all of this funding, like where we got the funding to this survey and the funding that's going to be able to be distributed, is from the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. And they've been super generous with what we're able to do and giving us flexibility. So those are 2 things that I think are important to highlight. Getting back to results. So here we can see the different communities, St. Joseph at the top right, sort of being the people that rated things as most important, kind of in the further right side, and also that they rated as the highest quality. And then we can kind of see this slide downward a little bit. But I want to mention here, if someone said not at all important, that would be on the very far left side of this graph. So just because that there's a little bit to the left doesn't necessarily mean there's a huge difference in terms of those importance ratings. And the same goes for quality, right? Being quality, that would be like, I strongly agree this is really high quality in my neighborhood. If people said this was really low quality in my neighborhood, it would be almost near the bottom of the entire square. So there, in essence, a lot of the grouping is actually pretty tight compared to what it could be in terms of the differences and that sort of thing. But we do, of course, see some differences, and we're going to talk more about those. So, going into the overall county results, just to give you an idea of sort of what the whole county is thinking about, and this is around 1,100 people were able to respond to the survey, which is amazing. That's a really good size of people, and we can start to make claims about what the whole county thinks based on that type of number. And so, in terms of importance, the least important, and actually what was rated as the lowest quality, is this idea of opportunities to engage socially. So, that idea of like getting opportunities to meet with people, go into public places and engaging with your neighbors and that sort of thing. Then, slightly after that, in terms of importance, is being socially connected with your neighbors and being able to rely on them in times of need. But that was also rated as slightly higher quality. And then the highest quality ratings actually came from this idea of infrastructure and cleanliness and pride throughout the county. These are pretty good ratings. And then the importance kind of scaled along to the right with that. We see a pretty big jump as far as what importance is. And then across the whole county, we see a bit of a dip in terms of the quality ratings into this idea of safety, peace, and crime, and then also youth safety and engagement, having for kids having things to do, kids staying out of trouble, and the neighbors, trusting your neighbors to kind of look after kids as well. And so what you'll notice as we go through some of like the specific geographies, including Benton Harbor, Benton Heights, and St. Joseph, we're going to look at in depth. The shape of this graph is going to look very similar, and it's mostly the height that changes, which is actually a really fascinating finding. So this is for Benton Harbor, and as I mentioned, the shape is very similar. So from importance, we're looking at opportunities to engage socially, and then social reliability, quality infrastructure, and then again the dip for safety, peace, and crime, and then youth safety and engagement. And this kind of presents an opportunity in potentially those spaces of safety, peace, and crime, and then youth safety and engagement. And looking at some of the comments that people talked about in the surveys, people are talking about shootouts, being afraid for their children to be able to go outside because they're afraid for their safety. People are talking about abandoned homes and the infrastructure pieces of sidewalks and speed humps and actually cars traveling really quickly, and that being a dangerous environment, as well as lighting and those sorts of things. And so there's a lot here about gun violence and how that takes away from people's feelings of safety, and also about like police and how it doesn't seem like there's a lot of resolution to some of these things that happen in the community. So that's a lot of the big components here, and we'll have some further things to share later on. But I also wanted to be able to present to you all, some of the other communities that are nearby to sort of see what sort of things they talked about as well. So these are the ratings for St. Joseph, and you can see they're all in that upper right quadrant. So people rated the quality of these sort of neighborhood aspects. And we'll actually be able to show you later on in this presentation some of the specific line items that people sort of rated or considered when they're thinking about their neighborhood. But it's still that same shape, that kind of like, I don't even know, a little like boring roller coaster where you go up and then it's like this little slide down. But in St. Joe, what people talked about is this where we see sort of their lowest quality ratings, neighborhood associations, things where it's where they're feeling isolated. They're talking about still this idea of like sidewalks, not having sidewalks and places to go out. Their parks, not very usable, no community events. So they're more focused on this opportunities to engage socially. And I think, part of that comes from this idea of safety being so important and the quality not being quite as rated highly in Benton Harbor. And so the sort of needs, if you think about like what is most urgent for me and my family in my neighborhood, those are the kind of needs that dictate what people are looking for when they're thinking about what's going to bring them sort of to what brings their neighborhood to the next level, what keeps it improving going forward. And then going into Benton Heights, which is where we currently are here at First Church of God, in like a little storage closet because our colleagues are all off there doing a thing. We're having a retreat with our population health colleagues. And so we see again this similar shape. This one actually is more like a
U.
Yes, it's like a U. And these ratings are actually a little bit lower. And in a slide or two, we'll showcase each of these graphs side by side so you can take a second and look over the differences in these locations of dots between the three communities that we're showcasing. But we heard a lot of the same things that we heard from the comments in Benton Harbor, talking about being dangerous. It's hard to let kids go out and enjoy themselves. And actually, there's a little bit more of that focus in Benton Heights, specifically about the youth not having as many opportunities to do things. There's a lot of sort of fear that things aren't going to change. And so that's another component of all of this is like people are admitting to us or like confiding in us and saying like, we don't think things are going to change. And so we kind of have this imperative to get something done here too. But also talking about shootings, playing safely, having the kids go out, the lack of parks. So all of these things, I think one of the big takeaways, and I think in this next slide we can see, is that across the communities, this level of importance is very similar. I mean, these are like almost in the exact same spot as far as who rated what importance. And the big difference is the quality. And so, people want the same things. People want safe neighborhoods. People want to be able to rely on their neighbors. People want to be able to go out and walk on the sidewalk, take their dog for a walk without worrying about like glass being broken on the street and those sorts of things. And now it's kind of up to us to think about like what small interventions can we come up with from this funding to focus in and maybe think about some ways to improve some of the things that were rated as the highest need. And I wanted to showcase some like more in-depth findings, some interesting things that came out looking specifically at Benton Harbor and Benton Heights in these two sort of the things that were rated as the most importance, but also that rated less highly on the quality, safety, peace, and crime, and then youth safety and engagement. And it looks like generally as you get older, you're more likely to say like, yes, there is things for kids to do. And which if you're in this 65 and up group, maybe you're not like exposed to that. And you're just thinking, oh yeah, like when I was around, there are things to do. But as you get younger, you sort of realize like, no, there's some problems here, as well as with the safety and peace and crime. And this we saw in Benton Heights and Benton Harbor. And specifically in Benton Heights, interestingly, like the people that are parent age, 30 to 44, were the most likely to rate like the quality very low in terms of this youth engagement and safety. And then this is, essentially every single question we asked on the survey, and it's grouped by the construct that we talked about. So here we have safety on the top grouping of things, and then we have the youth safety and engagement on the bottom grouping. And then you can see from the color coding, like the exact rating for each community group that we surveyed, going through St. Joseph, where you see a lot of green things that means good. And some of the questions are a little bit tricky because we asked things like in a reverse way. So people would say disagree, but that's actually a good thing. Like for instance, I hear gunshots going off in my neighborhood. Disagree would be actually a really positive thing for your neighborhood. So then, looking at some of these super red areas, we hear about that question, guns going off in the neighborhood, cars driving too quickly, and you being able to leave your doors unlocked and those sorts of things. And then this idea of like constructive things for kids to do down at the very bottom, we see a really big disparity in that particular question between St. Joseph, Benton Harbor, and Benton Heights. And we also have all of this information. I know this is a lot. You can pause, you can come back and look. We can share some of this stuff out for sure. And, look at these ratings. And, the lowest number you could possibly see in these numbers is a 1. A 2.5 is like middle. That means like that's right in the middle. People kind of, the same number of people said agree and the same number of people said disagree. And then a 4 is the absolute highest you can see. And so, looking at opportunities for engagement, it's actually not, we don't see a lot of green in any of the communities, but we still do see the disparities between the geographies. Same for infrastructure and pride. And then particularly, in this sort of third column about social connectedness and reliability, looking at in general, this is a close-knit neighborhood where we see kind of like a consistent drop off between St. Joseph, Benton Harbor, and then Benton Heights. And then also people sharing the same values in the neighborhood is another one where we see that sort of thing. So there's a lot of interesting little tidbits in here to pull from, but generally speaking, we have sort of these specific action areas, and this is like the beginning of a conversation. This is not like a mandate, or this is not necessarily like the way to go, but essentially what people said in the community is that these are the things that are the most important, and these are also things that have room for improvement for quality, which is crime. And it's less about theft or property related, although that's part of it. It's less about that, but more about safety, including violence, guns, and also vehicle speeds, and people feeling safe when they're out and about. And then also for youth, having that things for kids to do, and having ways for them to stay out of trouble, and those sorts of things. And the Benton Harbor CDC is, and Present Pillars as well are already doing a lot of things like this. And we also want to recognize other organizations in the community and help spread, this funding as far and as well as it can be distributed. So said a lot. I think that is, unless Heather, you have anything to add?
No, you did a fantastic job.
So that's everything. And Ashley, you can wrap us up and get us to questions and that sort of thing.
Yeah, so if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. But in the meantime, I'm going to put the link to the mini grant application. And we'll also post it again from our page as well. But for those of you who are just tuning in, with this research project, we had the opportunity for the various organizations to acquire funding to implement a project in response to the findings that we found. And so what we've decided to do is to award residents mini grants of up to $500 to implement their own project that addresses one of the 5 finding areas. And so I'll just reiterate those. The first one is quality infrastructure, cleanliness, and pride. The second one is safety, peace, and crime. Third is youth engagement and safety. Fourth, being socially connected to neighbors. And then the fifth one is general opportunities to engage socially. And so through that link, you can apply for funding to support a neighborhood program, whether it's a community cleanup, if there's a blighted alley in your neighborhood that you feel like you want to clean up, you can apply for funding support for that. If you work with youth currently and you are in need of program support for a project that you have coming up, you can apply for those things. Or if it's a new project for engagement that you want to explore. So we're open to all ideas. And so we'll be taking application submissions until the funding runs out. And so we'll be hopefully these are projects that can be done throughout the summer. And so we'll post more follow-up information. So if you have any questions, feel free. I'm sorry, I'm tired. Feel free to reach out to myself or James Gunter from Present Pillars with any questions. If you have questions about the application before you get started, we're open to those as well. So I'm excited about this project and really putting the ownership and opportunities in the hands of the people who live here in direct response to the things that we say we want in our community. And so I will be looking forward to receiving and reviewing those applications.
And I want to say also, this is, Corewell Health has a role in these neighborhood level issues. And if you took the survey, you know that we also asked a bunch of questions about the hospital and how we can improve trust in the hospital. And, we're prioritizing this community neighborhood level information first. We actually just started looking into the hospital level stuff, but, we're committed as part of this grant, as well as sort of on our team, we're committed toward using the findings from both the neighborhood side and from the hospital side to try and get something done in the hospital.
But this is just stage 1.
Yeah, so that's but so the health system definitely has a role in all of this. I mean, in thinking about, like, for instance, violence. I mean, people that experience violence often come to the emergency department, and so we have that direct access, and so we have some type of role to play. We're not exactly sure what yet, and we're exploring that. If you have ideas, we're open to hearing things. If you have ideas about what role the health system should play, we're all ears.
Yeah, well, thank you. I for one, have certainly appreciated the role that Spectrum or Corewell has played in our work in helping us to better connect and understand the needs of the community, and your willingness to take the steps that are necessary to kind of mend and repair past relationship issues as it relates to the healthcare system. And so I'm excited about these findings, and it was just really interesting to see that even though we have very different community makeups in various areas, a lot of the needs and the things that we desire for our community, they're very much in alignment. And so that was really interesting for me to see as we continue to grow and build upon our work. And so I'm just really grateful for this opportunity and the invitation to be a part of this project.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, we'll be looking forward to your grant applications. In the meantime, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Thank you, Heather and Nathan, for your time today.
Thanks for having us.
Appreciate it.
Alrighty, bye.
Take care.